All right, so Georgia, Kirby Smart has a great opportunity this week, and I'm sure he's already discussed it, to adjust something that has always been a big staple of his time at Georgia, and that is not talking to the other team. I was in the photography room before the game, and just right outside of where we are, Jalen Carter and a couple other guys at Georgia. I don't know if you'd want to say got into it, but certainly we're talking to some players from Missouri, and that's just something that Georgia almost never does. And I've got a story for on this, so stick with me here. It's not just about this particular team, but here's what Kirby had to say about the pregame, whatever that was. He says, "All I worry about is our guys' behavior, and uh, I don't want to represent that at all. Um, I think we've done a really good job here at Georgia of representing our university the right way. We play with our helmets, so we don't talk to the other team. And by the way, they don't. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. He said disappointed in any player that would talk to somebody on the other team, and we don't condone it. It's something we need to get fixed. Some teams you play do that more than others, and some teams are from the same line of thinking as yourself in terms of not talking after plays and not talking before games. I'm not saying that Missouri is. I'm saying that I'm worried about how our guys behave, and that's not what we want. He's exactly right. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION. I never in the 15 games Georgia saw last year saw them talk at all. The link is down below if you want me to sign it. Make sure that you're letting me know. But this is like a really important thing. I gotta say, um, because emotions are not easily handled um, when you're chirping around with the other team. Immediately you're putting more pressure on yourself. It seems like. Well, number one, you're not concentrating on what matters the most, and I have always found that teams that talk the most are the teams that are kind of scared to go into a situation. I don't know who was talking the most during that game. I know that after the game, what was I've not seen this during a Kirby time, I don't think, but like there was a little bit of pushing, shoving after the game. Now it ended quickly. A couple of videos ago, I talked about how Kirby and Eli Drinkwitz did not um, meet. They actually did meet just before Kirby ran over to this little scrum that was happening, and they shook hands before Kirby ran over there. So I missed that. I was out there right there, but I didn't see the two of them shake hands. I'm normally around the coaches as time expires. You've got four state troopers out there with you too. And everybody was trying to diffuse the situation. So you did not get a traditional, lingering handshakes between the two teams. I think plenty of guys exchanged pleasantries, but I think you don't want the talking. It doesn't do any good. It just doesn't. And that is like a major thing in my view. The part he talks about, this is dead on correct. Disappointed in any player that would talk to somebody on the other team. We don't condone it. It's something we need to get fixed. Like that is a huge teachable moment right now for Georgia as they go into what will the lead into the stretch run of this season. They were tested, and after watching the game and looking at some other stuff through the years, I think that is a big deal win for Georgia. It the online presence in the comments sections, folks on Dog Post, it feels like Georgia lost that game. They didn't lose the game. I can assure you they did not. It'd be much worse in the comments section. They did not lose the game. And, just like, we've seen three teams in a row with Georgia, Bama, and LSU go a collective whatever it is and won. Like 30, let's see, they go, I think, a collective 44 and 1. That's what the last three national champions did. Only the Georgia game against Alabama was a loss in the SEC championship game in 2021. We've not seen a lot of competitive games between, the eventual national champion and their opponents over the last 3 years. Oh, the Georgia Clemson game was close, okay, but um, and the Georgia and the LSU Alabama in 19. But my point is that typically there are either losses or close games, and I think you're telltale signing it if you're communicating with the other team about what either you're going to do or what they're going to do. It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what they say. And it really is an extremely important part of life to be about yourself, and that's it. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean, at Dog Post, as an example, we have a lot of different competitors. Some do exactly what we do, some do parts of what we do. We don't care what other people do. I don't. And we can't control what other people do. We can't control what other people say, and almost none of the people on the beat at Georgia are, chirping about themselves. But my point is, if we don't execute what we're supposed to do, it doesn't matter what people say about how good we are or how poor we are. So that to me was a sign that, and I did not see it, so I couldn't have known that. But going into that game, that's a bad sign. And here's the example from the past. In 2015, Georgia was a 1 point favorite over Alabama. That should have never been the case. That was an example of just insanity, and it can happen in Las Vegas too. When Alabama came onto the field, the Georgia players were warming up the way they normally do, which was on the sideline by the cheerleaders, not so different from where the student section is. It goes student section, hedges, cheerleaders, field. And that's the side of the field that the defensive backs were on. And when Alabama came out, there was plenty of chirping and all this back and forth from mainly from the Georgia players. And I saw Kirby run by, and there were staff folks there who knew him. These were not necessarily assistant coaches at the time, but he just, they were saying to him, as I recall, something like, what's going on here? And he just like did like, I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. But Georgia wasn't ready to play that game that day in 2015. And they got utterly dominated by Alabama in the rain. Block punt. I don't remember if Derrick Henry had a big game or not. That was a good Alabama team. They won the national championship. That was not a great Alabama team, but they were tough enough. They had already lost to Mississippi that season, um, in a somewhat decisive way, I think. And they went on to win the national championship. Now, what did they learn in 2015? What did they have that they learned that they couldn't participate in the stupidity of the pregame chitter chatter? Well, let's review that team just real quick. This is the last team that Nick had with Kirby Smart on it. They drilled Wisconsin and then beat Middle Tennessee, and then they lost by 6 to Ole Miss. Now, that was a shocking result. People may or may not remember that, but that was a shocking result. And then they beat Louisiana Monroe, and the Georgia game was their next big test. They won it 38-10. They had to survive some games later in the year. One against Tennessee, they won that game by 5 at home. They had to survive Clemson in the national championship game. But there were plenty of games that Alabama played that fall where, they didn't get scored on a lot, but they were in some tight fights. The Tennessee game, I remember the LSU game. That game was not particularly close. Now, a season later, they almost lost to Mississippi State in 2016 on the road. Like they were losing late, like with 3 minutes to go or something like that. And of course, the only game they lost that season was on the last play of the game to Clemson. But you're gonna get tested. I mean, that's just what it is. And you know, A season ago, people forgot about the Clemson game because it was the first game of the season, and then like they had the whole mess with JT getting hurt, and there was, you're going to have up and down parts of years. But the one thing that has to stay consistent are what are your values? And if your values are we don't talk to other teams, they did that the other night. Does it was it being uncomfortable and deciding to talk? I mean, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Missouri was chirping or not. Where that happened was right where the Missouri like weight room is, and like you can just roll down into the corner of the end zone. And the Georgia players were walking around. It was Jalen and a couple other guys, and maybe they felt like, I mean, I don't know, but that was right where we came out to do our job, and that's right where Missouri comes out, and it was their weight room is right there. So like players from Mizzou were like trickling on and off the field a lot at that point. But if you're really going to be what you are, you cannot talk to the other team. I mean, it's and he by the way, if I agreed with it and that's what you are, or if I disagreed with it and that's what you are, you have to be that thing. I agree with it. Um, Almost nothing ever good comes from talking to the person that you're competing against. It just doesn't. Now, if it's some summer league AAU thing, okay, maybe. But if that's not who you are, then you just don't do it. And we saw a lot of you just don't do that the other day at Georgia. Now they corrected a lot of it in the second half. They did, but that was a huge learning moment for Georgia on Saturday night.